Welcome back to Tim's Vinyl Confessions. I'm Tim Derling, and my good buddy Ches is sitting in with me on this episode. Pardon me. Hello, Ches. How are you?
I'm great, Tim. Thanks for having me. Excited to do these deep dives with you. Thank you.
Yeah, this is the first time that Ches is going to be sitting in on a Sammy Hagar deep dive, and this is going to be interesting because this is an album that I wasn't overly impressed with in Sammy's catalog, and I've taken some heat for it. I've taken a few shots for it because I was very honest with how I felt about it in Red on Black. So Ches agreed to talk about this with me. So I'm curious his opinion on it. I've listened to it again and again and again. We'll get into it. It's this album here, Not for Sale, Sammy Hagar and the Wabaritas, which came out in 2002. So this is it's interesting because I got to say though I love the CD design
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
with Sammy on the quarter. And this is kind of neat too. The mannequins. I don't know. It's kind of a cool like little Photoshop trick they did with making them look like just parts.
Right.
So this was an album that I remember not being that much into, but it's Sammy, so of course I bought it. And over the years, I've gone back to it and listened to it, and yeah, we'll talk about it track by track. But one thing I want to mention is that this is the only album of Sammy's that came out on a label called 33rd Street Records, which short-lived label. It was a division of Tower Records, and apparently there were distribution problems, and by 2005 I think it was out of business. I had a hard time finding this album. I actually had to order it from a local store, and it's the first time I ever had to do that it wasn't either I didn't find it on a store shelf, or Columbia House didn't have it, or I had to really work hard for it. And I remember after all that getting it and being a little underwhelmed with it, but and I don't know if that has something to do with it, but and I mentioned this in the book. This was a period where it was harder and harder for veteran musicians to land major label deals. So they were just trying anything. And this 33rd Street Records came along. The only other album I know that was on that label was something that Greg Raleigh from Journey and Santana put out, a solo album on that label, but it was pretty short lived. Do you remember getting this album, or like did you get it when it was current, or what's your experience with this?
So when I knew it was coming out, right? I had read about it, and I buy all Sammys on release day if I can, or shortly after. I could not find this album anywhere. Like I couldn't find it anywhere. It wasn't getting any airplay on the local rock stations, and all the Sammy albums always got airplay. And so I couldn't find it forever. And it took me forever to find it. So finally I got one, but it was like years later on Amazon. So what I had to initially do, and I don't like doing this, but I like it better over streaming. If I can't find an album, I will buy the iTunes version, at least like I bought it. So I had to end up doing that, but I couldn't find a physical copy like forever. And when I read your chapter on it in the book, it explained some things that I didn't know about. I didn't know about the distribution problems. I didn't know about that record label. I knew it sounded weird. I never heard of it before, but it took me forever to get that physical copy. So I had to buy mine off iTunes. Like it was nowhere to be found. And I think kind of like when I read your chapter on the book and kind of the initial thoughts I had, it kind of all started to make sense, kind of like maybe why we couldn't find that anywhere. It was very bizarre because you always found Sammy Hagar releases like all over the place around here. And this one, you just couldn't find. You knew it was out there, but couldn't find it. Yeah.
Yeah, and I do remember at the time as well, one of the reasons I knew this album existed was because I bought an issue of Guitar World, and they talked to him about it, because I bought that issue because I wasn't buying a lot of Guitar World at the time because it tended to be newer
Yeah.
newer artists that I wasn't into. But I bought this one because it was an interview with Sammy. There was an interview with Richie Sambora, and there was an interview with Tom Scholz, because Boston had also put out an album that became hard to find with Corporate America. I will say I like this better than Corporate America, but anyway, this album was kind of my understanding from reading the liner notes. Sammy wasn't planning on doing an album. It just kind of all came together, and that's maybe one of the things that I hear when I listen to this album, because my overall impression of it, and it's not easy for me to I don't throw these things out like, oh, I think this was uninspired, or I don't think this was very good. I want to like something. When an artist that I am a fan of puts something out, you want to like it. I don't want to not like it. But I remember finding it a bit of a chore to listen to this album because it just didn't sound like they had much for songs. Um, and I think the band sounds great. I think it's produced well. It's very bare bones production. I think Sammy sounds great on it. But also, what people have to keep in mind is that this was on the heels. This was the follow up to 1013, which I think is one of his best albums. I think that was a fantastic album.
Great
Um,
album. Yeah.
one of the best he's done, this this century, literally. And this just does not live up to it. So let's get into it track by track, Ches. The
Yeah.
first track is probably the track that got the most attention, Stand Up. Now, it's not exactly the same, but this song appeared in the movie Rockstar, which is, for those that haven't seen it, this is the one with Marky Mark, Mark Wahlberg,
Yeah.
as a tribute band singer who ends up singing for the actual band. Very, very, very loosely based on
Yeah.
the story of Ripper Owens getting into Judas Priest, but very loosely based on it. Jeff Pilson was in the band, Jason Bonham, oddly enough. Can't
Zach
think
Wild.
of
Zach
Yeah,
Wild.
Zach Wild. Yeah. So, I remember it came out in 2001. It was a fun movie. I kind of thought it was a fun movie at the time. I don't know what I think of it if I saw it now, but nobody was talking about this sort of music at that time. So it got a little bit of attention. But yeah, there's a version of this song that's on that movie. And that was like this band's, what were they called? I almost said Steel Dragon.
No Dragon. Yeah.
I almost said Steel Panther, but the
Yeah.
mighty Steel Dragon. That
Mhm.
was like This was like their song, their big song, right? Stand
Yeah.
Up. And I I don't think there's much of a song on this album. I don't know. What are your thoughts on the version of Stand Up that's on here?
Well, I really like that Rockstar movie, and I bought that soundtrack. So
Good
I
soundtrack.
oh,
Excellent soundtrack.
fantastic. So I knew the song "Stand Up." I knew the Rockstar version,
Yeah.
and I read the liner notes. So I know I must have read that Sammy wrote it, but for some reason I just wasn't putting two and two together. And you kind of read something, but didn't kind of click. And so when I got this version, my iTunes version, and then my physical version, I said, like, I know that song. And then, oh yeah, Sammy did write that song. So I was so familiar with the Rockstar version, but yeah, they are different. I think Sammy does a good job. He sounds really good on it. The band sounds really good. I think one thing that kind of like I'm resonating with some of the songs on the album, it is a very raw production. I think that the production was a little bit more cleaner. I think the songs would have stood out a little bit more. But it's kind of like, it's weird that I'm saying that, because I do like the production. I like the raw production. I enjoy it. But I'm thinking for these songs, I think if they were just glossed over just a tiny bit more, I think it would have like made them stand out a little bit better. But everybody sounds good on it. I'm thinking with the production on some of the songs, if it was glossed over just a tiny bit more, I think the songs would have stood out a little bit more. But I do think he does a good version of it, and I do like that song.
It's weird because I hear I agree with what you're saying, because yeah, the whole band sounds great. Usually I'm all for that raw production, but I just think with a set of songs like this, a lot of it sounds unfinished to me. A lot of it sounds like, whether it's lyrically or whether it's, maybe cut that section off, or maybe don't repeat that as many times, or whatever. There just seems like it seems like it was rushed. And I think I would have thought that even if I hadn't read that it kind of was. It was, he was not planning on putting out an album in 2002. Keep in mind, this was the year of the Sam and Dave tour, one of the weirdest
Yeah. Yeah.
things
Odd.
that ever
Never thought
happened.
this
And
would ever happen.
it might have been, it might have been, that, I don't know, recorded on that tour. I'm not sure. But yeah, and stand up, the lyrics are different. One thing that I noticed is, like, I wasn't expecting, because I saw the movie, then I got this album. I wasn't expecting to hear the organ passages, because
Yeah.
that's not on the Steel Dragon version.
Mhm.
Yeah, I don't know that there's like the pregnant pauses in that song. It kind of slows all the momentum down. The riff is just okay. It sounds like it could have been done by any band at that time. Like it's got that drop tuning, and normally I like that, but I don't know. It just it wasn't. I remember thinking, and this is supposed to be like the focus track. I'm like, boy, I hope this gets better. And results vary. The next track is this was released as a single. Hallelujah. What do you think of this song?
Okay, so I really like this song, but this is where it kind of gets confusing for me because I this song appeared as an extra track on the live album, which came out after the
Yeah,
Not for Sale. So I had that live album first, right?
yeah,
I had that live album before I actually bought my iTunes version of this Not for
yeah,
Sale. So I was familiar with that. So before I got that Not for Sale, I thought that that was just like, how bands put out live albums and they just kind of tack on a new song. I thought that's what he was doing. But then when I got the Not for Sale and kind of read about it, said, no, wait a minute. He knew, and you mentioned this in your book, he knew about the distribution problems and he really believed in the song. So he wanted to put it on that live album to get it like another life out of it. So it was kind of confusing there until I kind of sorted it out. So I was familiar of it from the live album, but I really like the song. It's a good chorus, solid melody on it. I think this is one of the better songs on the album. And yeah, so it kind of like just getting back to your point, kind of it feels rushed. So you got that first song that was, it was kind of like it was already out there, right? So it's kind of like he didn't really have to rewrite it, write it. He kind of had it written, so he just kind of changed it up a bit. And then there was an instance I'm going to kind of mention later. I think you're going to probably mention it too, where he kind of felt he kind of just put something in because he kind of needed it. But again, for as far as this song, I really like this song. I think it's one of the better songs on the album. But again, got no traction down here, no airplay, even though it was kind of being pushed as a single.
yeah, yeah. I mean, it was just invisible. They didn't, there just wasn't much going on with it. But I find there's one part in the song. I write about it in the book. It almost seems like you know Sammy's not one of these guys. Like a lot of people give him a hard time for his lyrics, and I think he's written some great lyrics. Syllables to get to the chorus. It's a catchy chorus. It's not bad. It's
Yeah.
not bad. But I think the best things on this album never go above not bad. And I just expect more. I just expect more to Sammy. Next up is a song that has appeared multiple times, and I just don't think it's that great a song. Halfway to Memphis, like he did this on Light Roast. Yeah, he seems to really like this song, and I'm not hearing anything special. What are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, mid tempo. Again, he sounds really good on it. It's kind
Yeah,
of a bigger sound on it, and yeah, there's different versions of this song like out there. I think this is like my favorite version of the song. So I think there was a video to this song, if I'm not mistaken. I think there was a video. So, and I think I remember seeing this video. That was the only kind of you know um, preview of the album that I had there. But again, it's just like I think it could have been better, right? I just keep going back to that production, and it's just like it just another couple of gloss overs. And I think if Vic's guitars, sometimes I feel on some of his albums, I think some of Vic's guitars could have used a little bit more kind of crunch to them, a little bit more oomph.
yeah.
Well, I'm kind of thinking that's kind of where my production, but I really do like Vic's guitar playing, but just a little bit more of a gloss over. I think it would have stood out better, and it would have been maybe a more of a lasting impression. But it's decent. He sounds fantastic on it, but
Yeah.
in a tiny bit better.
Yeah, and I agree. This is by far the best version of it. I mean, because he did it again on his next studio album, "Living It Up," which is my least favorite Sammy album. Spoiler alert: we haven't gotten to that one yet. And then he does it again on Light Roast, which is mostly that's all remix anyway. But this is the best version of it. Yeah, again, I just think that there's something that's just not quite clicking, and I don't know if it's um, and see, one of the reasons that the Sammy, I consider them all Sammy Hagar albums, is because he really doesn't have a strong, other than when Jesse Harms gets involved in the songwriting, um, he doesn't have a strong co-writer, and I think Sam does his best stuff when he's got an Eddie Van Halen or Joe Satriani or somebody to bounce things off of.
Yeah.
But it sounds like he's, for the most part, he comes up with it on his own, and most of the time, that's okay. He's written several great songs, all on his own. But I just think there's a little bit of fine tuning that could have elevated these songs. For example, the next song, and I think there's a video for this song too. Things Have Changed. Now, this is a catchy song, similar to Hallelujah, but again, it goes. There's something about, if I like a song, I can let some lyrical bits go by that are like either repetitive or just I don't know about that. But the chorus to this song is literally go, things have changed, things have changed. I'd like to think they'd stay the same, but things have changed. There just needs to be more. There's something. There's a good song in there. It sounds like a lot of this album to me. Just my opinion. It sounds unfinished. What are your thoughts on Things Have Changed?
I think let's go back to that unfinished point, because this song has got a really good hook. I think there's a great song there, but this is the song, like I keep talking about, I wish the production was a little bit more. This was a song I thought, like this could have been a hit if it was just like, if the production was a tiny bit better, right? And I think these things with production, like they kind of go, it's all kind of like how we hear it, but I do really like the hook on this song. I think it could have been like a good, great radio hit, and I think probably they were aiming for that. But I just think the production was too raw for it. That's just my opinion on it. But again, it kind of goes back to that rushed. It kind of does feel like it was rushed, right? Like you got a couple of songs on there that feel like, okay, they're just kind of like, I need a couple of songs. Let me kind of put these on there. But then it almost sounds like that production was rushed. But again, I don't know anything about how that goes. It's just kind of like how I hear it. But, I do enjoy the song, but I think, geez, a little bit more gloss on that production. I think it really would have stood out a lot more.
Yeah, I agree. There are parts of this song that really, like, wow, this could, this could be a really great melodic song. And in the vein of a lot of the stuff that he was doing in the 80s and the Geffen years, like I'm thinking of a song like Back Into You from I Never Said Goodbye, or Never Give Up, or like it's got a really, really catchy chorus, and it was designed that way. It just feels like there's something missing there. By the way, this song did get enough airplay. It charted at 35 on the Billboard Mainstream Rock chart, and it's the last time he had a song do that. So yeah, it's there. There's, and I think that's the frustrating thing. It's like you're not listening to it and go, these are bad songs. No, these could be really good songs, and in the end, they're just okay songs, and some of them just are kind of, I don't really feel one thing or another. Now, the next song I do feel something about, and I think it was totally unnecessary. Whole Lot of Zepp. I mean, this was another song he talked about in that Guitar World interview, and I remember reading it and thinking, well, okay, I mean, Sammy singing Led Zeppelin, I like that idea. What's this going to sound like? Well, first of all, there's I said this in the book. There's no universe where Whole Lot of Love needs organ in it. That's not necessary. So this is what is it? It's Whole Lot of Love, bit of Kashmir, and there's a third song, and it's escaping me right now, that he puts together as this Black Dog.
Yeah.
And I just don't think I don't get it. I don't, I would have much preferred if Sammy had taken maybe is there any such thing as an obscure Zeppelin song, right? But not Whole Lot of Love or Black Dog. But if he'd taken a song that was sort of off the beaten track and done a version of it, like, I'd love to hear him do a version of something like Nobody's Fault But Mine. Like that'd be awesome.
Yeah.
This completely falls flat. And I have no problem saying I don't like this. What are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, like to me, it's almost exactly what I got written down. I think it's a mashup. It's a mashup. Feels like a mashup of three songs. I would have preferred just like a cover of a Zeppelin song.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, and then I'm listening to, okay, I like it, and then it switches over to another part of a song right there.
And it doesn't feel. It feels forced.
Yeah.
Like we got to change here. It doesn't flow very well. Like one of my favorite kind of mashup type things is on Dream Theater's Change of Seasons.
Oh,
yeah. When the big medley, they go from Pink Floyd to Kansas to Queen to Jill. Like that is flawless. That almost sounds like a written piece of music with all these different movements in it. If you didn't know the original songs, that flows together so well.
Smooth.
This seems so deliberate.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And not the last time a Zeppelin reference in a Sammy song, because then there was that Chicken Foot song, Bigfoot.
Got Houses of the Holy.
Yeah,
and I liked that. I thought that was
that
cool. And I remember him
that was
saying
awesome.
in yeah, that's Bigfoot.
Yeah.
That's on Bigfoot. I remember him saying, he said, got Led Zeppelin on the box, and he's like, no, 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 I want to get specific. Got Houses of the Holy, and I
Yeah.
like that.
Love that.
So
Yeah.
okay, do the Ocean. That would have been
Yeah.
fun.
I just
Zeppelin
would have
do a great
preferred,
version of the Ocean.
yeah, like a
He could have,
cover.
yeah, like just an out. You got to credit them anyway.
Yeah.
So yeah,
He ended up doing that anyway because when he got the Circle
that's
together,
right.
they
Jason
put that
Bonham.
live album. They put that live mount. They were doing Zeppelin covers, so he kind of
Yeah,
ended up coming back to it. So yeah, it's funny how that kind of worked out. But I just for this, I just would have preferred just a straight cover of a Zeppelin song. You know?
well, for that matter, I mean, the very correct me if I'm wrong, but the very first thing he ever played with Eddie was rock and roll.
Oh yeah, that's
Farm
right.
Aid.
Yes.
That's
Yeah.
when he made the big announcement, right?
Yeah, that's
And they
right.
did rock and roll on the Live Without a Net. They did it on the 5150 tour.
Yeah,
How,
that's right. Yeah.
and that's a pretty common song, but just do a version of that. Have a because rock radio would have played it, I think, at the time because it's Zeppelin, right? Zeppelin are timeless.
Yeah.
Anyway, moving on. And by the way, that's another thing about this album is that it has been reissued, but as far as I know, in physical format, it's only ever been on CD. There's no, there's never had a vinyl reissue. Cassettes weren't being made at this time, especially by like a small label. So yeah, if you if you want this, you're going to have to buy. If you're going to buy a physical copy, it's going to be a CD of some sort,
Yeah.
which is kind of unusual in its own right. Next one is the Big Nail. I don't know what the Big Nail is. They make a big deal out of it. What do you think of this song?
So to me, it's kind of like it's not one of my favorites on the album. To me, like it's got like a Bob Dylan vibe. If it was Bob Dylan was doing hard rock, I think he even mentions Dylan in the song. If I'm not
I think
mistaken.
you're right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like when I hear it, I picture, is it supposed to be some sort of landmark? Like it's not, I don't get it. If it is, it's not well known enough to say, oh, I know what he's talking about with the big nail. I don't,
Yeah, so it's like to me, like you got this following the whole lot of Zepp. So those first four songs, I thought they were decent, and a couple of them really really good. So to me, like the album kind of dips kind of with these two. It's okay, but it's not as good as like the first four type songs. So I just get that if Bob Dylan was going to do like a hard rock song, I just kind of get that vibe from it.
yeah.
So and again he kind of revisits the because on that Sammy is it that Sammy and Friends album, I think they cover there's a Dylan cover Down the Road, I think. Oh, there's that one song, if I'm not being mistaken, the one with the numbers in it. Oh
Oh, the Rainy Day Women. That's on
yeah,
Living It Up. Yeah.
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 Oh yeah, that one. Okay, yeah. So it kind of comes back to these things. So
Yeah.
it's okay for what it is, but not as good as like the first four, in my opinion.
I just think if you're going to make something a repeated hook like he does with this, saying something people will know what it is. Cause I get into the weeds with it. What is the big nail? And
Yeah.
I kind of drift off into that. Next up is a song that honestly, I just listened to this out. I can't even think of how this goes. Make It All Right. What are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, it picks up a bit. Again, I just kind of go back to the production. It's got a good chorus on it, So again, if I guess rushed again. I think that was a perfect kind of wording that you used in the book there. But maybe could have used a little bit more work. Like I think there's a decent song there. It's okay. Definitely picks up better than the last two. But again, the strong parts of the album are those first four songs. So in my opinion,
Oh,
so
yeah.
that production, so it kind of like tails off a bit there. So I think I just keep going back to that production. I just kind of keep hearing that all the time. I think this one could have been better because I think there's a good chorus there.
Yeah. And speaking of which, I think the next song up is the title song, Not for Sale. Again, like things have changed, maybe, or even Hallelujah. I think there's a good song in here, but the way that they sing the chorus, All the Money in the World, is always sound rushed and always sound awkward to me. And it sounds like with a little bit of fine tuning, they could have had another really good melodic song here.
Yeah.
I appreciate the sentiment behind it, and Sammy's revisited this idea many times about
Yeah,
about money and greed and all that. But yeah, I think there's a better song here than what we're hearing.
I agree because there's a good hook in that song. There's a good hook in that Not for Sale. So I think if it could have been just a little bit more added to that, I think that would have been way better, because
Yeah.
it's a good hook in there for sure.
Yeah. Next up is it's one of the songs I actually really like on this album, and it surprised me because it's late in the track listing. The Big Square Inch. It's another The Big Something song, but this one is a fast kind of rocker, and I was actually surprised. It's a duet, like because Sammy trades off verses with drummer David
Yep.
Lauser,
Mm.
who I've never heard him sing before, and his voice kind of reminds me a little bit of Ace Frehley, but when Ace Frehley could sing really well,
Yeah.
like on his 78 solo album. That's what I kind of get. I like this one. What are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I like this one too. I think it's got a really good Vic solo on this one. So
Yeah.
it's faster. So I think, Vic shines on this one. So I like this one too. So it's kind of nice that it kind of picks up. So, I kind of I wonder if the rest of the songs were kind of like in this vein, what the album kind of would have been like, that type of thing. But
Yeah.
yeah, definitely picks up after it kind of went down a little bit. But yeah, Vic sounds really good on this one. Yeah, I really like what he's doing on this song.
Yeah, Vic is a guitar player. He's just a good all around player. And it can't be easy for anybody, I mean, obviously he was in the Bus Boys, so he had some history there, but anybody auditioning to play for Sammy Hagar is got to be like, well, I'm going to have to be learning some Van Halen songs. So you better
Right.
have your chops together. So Sammy's would never hire anybody that couldn't handle, learning some Betty stuff. But to me, then just as quick, it peters out with Karma Wheel because this song just goes nowhere for me.
Yeah, again, I just keep going back. I think it's an okay song. Again, I just kind of go back to the production a little bit, and maybe a tad bit too long. This song, but
Oh, for sure. Definitely too long.
I think there's something decent there to it. I just kind of come back. Like I just think the raw production wasn't what was that, and maybe like the rushness of it, and
Yeah.
and in fact, I also kind of think that me personally, the fact that I couldn't get a hold of this, maybe and kind of like I was hearing other stuff, like I heard that live album first and then finally broke down and got the iTunes version. I kind of like I wondered if I'd gotten this like right away because I thought the 1013, like that is just amazing. I thought that was like the lost Van Hagar album. A lot
Yeah.
of those
Oh, yeah. A
songs.
lot of those songs
Yeah.
I could hear
Oh my
Van
gosh.
Halen. I could have heard Van Halen doing a
Yeah.
lot of those songs, Deeper Kind of Love. And yeah, a
Yeah.
lot of them. Really, really good, really well thought out songs.
Yeah.
And that album only came out a year after Red Voodoo. So I don't know what happened with this one. I just have to think that there was a window of time they could record, and Sammy didn't have any songs, so just
I,
started,
I think
furiously writing out ideas.
it goes back to what you said. Like he kind of said he wasn't really going to do an album at that time, and that he was kind of, I think it was mentioned. So maybe he just had that, and then that with this record label that kind of came and went. No
Maybe
promotion.
they made him a deal and said,
Mm.
if you can get an album out in this time period, we'll give you X amount, whatever.
Yeah,
I mean, Tower Records was a big. I've never been to a Tower Records. It was
me
never
neither.
one anywhere where I lived, but I knew about it, right? I knew a
Yeah,
Tower Records, so it could have worked. So there you go, folks. Yeah, Karma Wheel is 5:47. They could have shaved at least 2 minutes off of it. It goes on way too long. But anyway, there thus ends Not for Sale. And I know we're going to have some disagreeing viewpoints. Keep in mind, folks, we're fans here. We sought this album out, and it just didn't click. Maybe someday it will. I don't know. Maybe there's a charm here that we're both of us are missing. And don't forget, folks, Red on Black, Listener's Guide to Sammy Hagar. This album and all of the albums are contained in here. Ches, thank you so much for sitting in.
yeah.
And it's really good to get other opinions on some of these latter day albums because it's hard to find people that know about them. It really is. So there you go. Yeah, we'll be seeing Ches again on one of these down the road, and he'll be on the show again, of course. I want to thank everybody for watching this edition of Tim's Final Confessions. We will see you later. Go listen to Not for Sale.